Chapter. So Jeannette, it's all yours.
All right. Thank you, Janice. And good afternoon and happy 2021 to everyone. I'm excited to be back here. So it wasn't all bad when we found out that the hiccup happened and it didn't record. So I get to share this message again. And I see, some names of people who were here the first session. So this is going to be some great reinforcement for you. Those of you who are in education, you know that repetition is a way to reinforce learning. So coming back for a second time, just thank you. I'm honored that you're here. And for those of you who are here for the first time, I hope that you enjoy this information that I am going to be sharing with you. And Sarah, I saw that pop up in the chat. Well, you're very welcome for speaking today. Okay, so what are we here to talk about? We're here to talk about G factor. And is your G factor, is it helping you or is it hurting you? I want to get an idea of who, right now we have about 59 participants. I would like to know where you're joining us from and what is your role? Are you a leader? Are you an individual contributor? Are you faculty? Are you a student or something else? And you can throw that into the chat via the all panelists, or you can do all panelists and attendees, and then it goes to everyone. So for me, it's just helpful to kind of know who the audience is. So as I frame up some of what I talk about, I can really tailor it to you. So it looks like I'm seeing a lot of faculty, a leader. Let's see, faculty and leader, Winona State, former student. Ashley Reisenen, your old name. Ashley was one of my students when I taught at the St. Cloud Technical College. It's so great to see you. Oh, that's super awesome. So I see teacher or faculty leader. So we're kind of running the gamut here. Let's see, Cass County Economic Development. So some government. I'm not seeing any students. So go ahead and just keep sharing that. So again, because as I give some examples or frame this up, I want to be able to make sure that it's meaningful for the type of environments and cultures that you are in. So, so thank you for who has put it or who has commented. And let's see, I see Minnesota Twins Baseball Club, individual contributor. Okay, so I'm seeing every type of person here other than student. So if you're a student, make sure you throw it in there so I don't forget to talk about you. All right, thank you for sharing that. So I'm Jeannette Grace, and this research that I'm going to share with you, I want you to share it with others. So if you decide to share it on social media, I would love it if you would tag me. These are the places you can find me on LinkedIn. If you just search my name, you'll notice my first name has 2 N's in it. A little bit on Twitter, and then I have a Facebook business page as well. So you can connect with me there. And I am going to encourage you, because even though this is a webinar, this is going to be interactive. I'm going to ask you to dig in and do a little bit of work. So if you can grab something to write with and something to write on, that will be helpful, because there are things I'm going to ask you to do to reflect, some activities, some notes that I'm going to ask you to take, so that it's really beneficial for you to spend this hour together. And I want to tell you this, there's some more good stuff at the end. This is not a sales pitch. This is truly a webinar, but there's some more good stuff at the end. So I hope you're able to hang on and be with us, in the last few minutes, because that's when I'm going to share what that stuff, so to speak, is. All right, let's go back, way back to when you were a baby, and think about how babies have this innate ability to draw people to them, right? You take a baby out in public, and whether it's strangers or neighbors or dogs, there's something about a baby that draws people to them. Now, this particular baby, I can tell you, grew up and was a talkative baby, a talkative child who used to get reprimanded in elementary school for talking too much in class. This baby also loved to talk because she was fascinated with human behavior. And that may be one of the reasons why for those of you who are from Metro State, as Janice is connected to Metro State, that is where I did my undergraduate degree, and my minor was psychology. You know, it really fed with this interest. So we grow up then, and maybe we lose our curiosity about human behavior, or we lose this ability to create this gravitational pull, right? It's not as cute when we do things when we get older as it is when we're young. So I was fascinated by this. If you haven't guessed it, that baby right there is me. And growing up and coming into the workplace, I've been so curious, like, why do people do what they do? Why do they say what they say? Why do they think what they think? And I had a theory around it. And that theory was G factor, that we have gravitational pull that draws us to people like babies. And coming into my career, what I noticed is that there were certain people that I absolutely loved to work with, that I wanted to work with. If we go back into when I was a student, there were certain faculty that I was like, ooh, I want to make sure I get in their class, because maybe there's a faculty member that, 4 different faculty members that teach the same course. So there were some faculty members where I'm like, ooh, I want to get into that section. There are some employers or some bosses that I would say, gosh, I'm really drawn to them. I want to work for them. Or even coworkers or fellow students, I want to be on a project with them. And then the opposite was true. There were people where I was like, nope, don't want to be on a team with that person. Certainly don't want to be on a school project with that other student. Don't want to take that class from that faculty member, and don't want to work for that leader in that organization. So I realized there was a group of people that had G factor, this gravitational pull. There was also a group of people that repelled me. And I'm going to guess that as I talk about that, you have people in your mind that kind of pop in. You're like, ooh, yeah, this person kind of has that it factor. And this person is the person that when they walk past me, I just look down like I didn't see them, because I don't want to engage in conversation. So when we think about that, the people who have that gravitational pull, that G factor, that helps them. The people who are repelling others, that's hurting them. It hurts their success as an employer, as an employee, as a coworker, as a faculty member, an individual contributor, a leader. It runs the gamut. Now, so I have this theory, right? Okay, there's gravitational pull, but I was smart enough to know that my theory alone wasn't enough, right? I needed to validate it. So what I did is I conducted a survey and engaged 834 people in the workplace. And essentially the question that I asked them was, what are the characteristics that draw you to someone else in the workplace? So what makes you trust someone? What makes you want to work with someone or work for someone? And what I found there were 8 secrets that create this gravitational pull from those 834 people. So it wasn't just my ideas, it's what the people that's, proverbially sit next to you, because we're not doing that in the workplace right now, but your coworkers, your students, your leaders, the people in your organization. What are things that are drawing them to you? And I put that in this book. So what I want to talk about today are 2 of the 8 G factors, because we don't have time to go through all 8, but remember, there's something really cool at the end if you can hang on. So what are 2 G factors that can help you to increase your gravitational pull? Now, here's what I believe. When you have G factor, you will have a positive reputation. Those of you who are faculty, when you have a positive reputation, students like me want to be in your classroom. When you have a positive reputation as a coworker, people want to collaborate with you in the workplace. When you have a positive reputation as a leader, you have more influence. People want to work for you, so on and so forth. So when you have that positive reputation, what follows is you stand out amongst others. And when you stand out, you are sought out. Now, that is the reason why I believe G factor is important. But I know this, you need to figure out what's in it for you. Why do you want G factor? So this is a moment where I want you to take that writing utensil and whatever you have to write down. Why do you want G factor? What's in it for you? Why do you want a positive reputation? Why do you want to stand out? Why do you want to be sought out? So take a moment and reflect on that. See what you can come up with. All right. It is through that lens that I want you to hear what I'm going to share with you, because the two G factors that I talk about today, I want you to be able to figure out how you can use them to get what you want, to get what you need so that you can increase your gravitational pull. So let's start with number one. So out of all 8, this is the number one G factor identified by those 834 working professionals. And it is gratitude, folks. It is showing appreciation. And you might be thinking, really, Jeannette? It's gratitude? That's it? That's the secret? Yes, that is the secret. So I want to develop this a little bit for you and share somebody in my life who had, I shouldn't say had, still has incredible gratitude G factor. This is Glennis Hall. I'm going to take you back to the early 90s where I was a student at the St. Cloud Technical College in the sales and management program, as it was called then. And I was a member of a student organization called DECA, or Collegiate DECA. Glennis, who you see here, was the executive director. So she was in charge of all of the chapters in the state of Minnesota. After I graduated, I said, you know what? I think I want to start a speaking career. So I called Glennis up out of the blue and I said, I want to start a speaking career and I will come to the fall conference, which I knew she had because I was a student and I used to go to it. I want to come to the fall conference and I will present at your conference, and Glennis, I will do it for free. Oh, and by the way, Glennis, this is Jeannette. This is Jeannette, who went to St. Cloud Technical College. Glennis's response was, oh, I know who you are, Jeannette. Bam. I was like, that was a clue that I had G factor, because there were hundreds of students that would have very brief encounters with her, but there was something that helped her remember who I was. Now, the story is not about my gratitude G factor. It is about Glennis's G factor. So here's what happened. I go to the conference and I present. At the end of the conference, she showed appreciation in 2 ways. One, she gave me a hug. Now you might be thinking, okay, you're talking about hugging as a way to show appreciation. I don't know if that flies in our workplace culture. We'll talk about that in a moment. She also handed me an envelope. When I opened that envelope, inside of it was a gratitude check. And if I recall, it was around $300. And to me, that was gold, because this was the early 90s. I was new to my career. I took a vacation day from work and I was a single mom. So I was not, in a great financial position. Here's what happened as a result of Glennis's gratitude G factor. It created loyalty. For the next decade and a half, when Glennis would say, Jeannette, will you come to the conference and help? I helped. Not for pay, I volunteered. And when Glennis would ask, Jeannette, can you load this box on a truck? I would say, absolutely, Glennis. And when Glennis called and she said, can you take time off from work to go talk to the state legislators to say why it's so important that we have funding for student organizations at the collegiate level? I said, absolutely, Glennis, I will do it. And I was loyal to Glennis up until the day that she retired. So I'm happy to say she's enjoying retirement, and her Christmas card this year was lovely, and she's enjoying her grandkids. So her gratitude G factor lives on, and the result was my loyalty. So when you put that in the context of what you're doing, when you're showing appreciation, you are creating loyalty. Now, here's what I hear when I talk about gratitude. I hear excuses. So I'm going to touch on just a couple of these. And I want you to be transparent with yourself, because if this is an excuse you use, I'm going to ask you a little bit later what's getting in the way of your own gratitude G factor. And if one of these excuses sound like you, I want you to write it down. All right, here's one. Why should I have to tell someone thank you for doing what they're supposed to do? Right? Why should I have to thank my coworker for meeting a deadline? Why should I have to thank a student for turning their paper in time? Why should I have to thank my employee that I lead for showing up to work? Well, you know what, folks? Because we as human beings, human behavior, we are really quite simple in some ways. I sometimes say we're like puppies. How do we train a puppy? We give them positive reinforcement to get them to do positive things. Humans are the same way. So, you don't have to thank someone for doing what they are hired to do or what they were expected to do. But if you want to help yourself, if you want to increase and grow your gratitude G factor, a simple thank you is a way to do it. Here's another excuse. I'm too busy. I got too much to do. It doesn't take a lot of time to step back, reflect, take a moment and recognize what the people around you are doing. What are they doing to contribute to your success? How are they helping you? All right. Now, I also want to validate this research by saying, there's some research that supports it. And I'm going to share that with you so you know that this gratitude G factor isn't just hot air. This is a study from 2002. And yes, 2002 is almost 2 decades ago. But this research fits in with employee engagement research. So I want to talk about it. What they found is that gratitude is an influencer of societal functioning as well as collective well-being. And the employee engagement research tells us that employees need to feel collective well-being. For motivation, we have 3 psychological needs. One of those needs is connectedness. So even though this is from 2002, we know that still today in the workplace, gratitude is a way to create that collective well-being. And if you're doing any reading of what has happened with the pandemic and people who are working remotely, this has been a challenge, right? Anxiety, depression, sadness is on the rise, and actively disengaged employees is also on the rise because this collective well-being is absent or it's at risk. So we want to make sure that we're going that extra step to express gratitude. All right, 2012, Burson and Associates found that saying thank you or employee recognition as a priority results in a 14% increase in engagement from your employees and productivity. So I don't know about you, but I look at that and I think, wow, saying thank you or recognizing somebody is going to give me a 14% return on that investment. To me, I think that is an incredible way to invest my time, even if I feel that I'm too busy, even if that excuse is getting in the way. Right. Now, this one is exciting to share. Any of you who have that psychology background, you're probably familiar with Martin Seligman. He's known as the father of positive psychology. And although this was done a number of years prior, it was featured in 2011 in the Harvard Medical School Mental Health Letter. What Martin Seligman did was he had his students write and then personally deliver a letter of gratitude. Now we are in 2021, right? So writing, they weren't typing it and sending it via text. They weren't doing it via email. They were taking pen and paper and they were writing it and then personally delivering it. The result, huge increase in happiness scores. And what's super, super cool about this is those happiness scores were not just for the people who received it, but that increase also happened to the people who wrote and personally delivered that letter of gratitude. So what this tells us is research shows when you express gratitude, you also get a benefit from it. So let's go into this. This is from the 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace. I'm going to give you a little bit of information from this book. Some of you may have read it, or some of you might be thinking, Jeanette, this sounds a little bit familiar. That is because first came the 5 love languages. And The Five Love Languages was written by Gary Chapman. But Dr. Chapman got a little curious and he thought, you know what? Do these languages exist? Do they live and breathe in the workplace? So he teamed up with an organizational psychologist, Paul White, and they did the research. And guess what they found? Those same 5 languages exist in the workplace, but they exist in the form of appreciation. So a few years ago, I had an opportunity to be on a small video chat with Dr. Paul White, and I totally geeked out. And he shared information from the book and from the research. So this is a good time for you to take notes. If you get the book, there is an assessment you can do in there to figure out what somebody's language of appreciation is. But I'm going to give you some percentages here that are going to give you a good place to start. All right, one of those languages of appreciation is words of affirmation. Approximately 45% of the people you engage with in work or school will have words of affirmation as one of their highest languages of appreciation. So it's a great place to start in expressing gratitude. Here are some things to think about. It can come in the form of encouragement, like, yes, you should go for that promotion. You should apply for that job. You should speak up in the meeting. You have something really important to say. Or it could come in the form of recognizing what someone did. Thank you so much for being courageous and speaking up in the meeting. Thank you for applying for that promotion. It could be something as simple as, thank you for picking up my copies from the copy machine, of course, in a time when we worked in the workplace. I want to note something came up here in the chat. It said, just yesterday, one of my coworkers called me and said, I helped this woman a lot and she advanced to a higher place, but not only she just took my help, but she also did not help me at all. To move up, you just have to use people and ditch it. Only those kinds of people can succeed and move up by stepping on the other and using people. That is reality. I just listened to my coworker. Oh my goodness, for the person who wrote that, I wish your coworker was here, because that's really misguided. That is a person who has lost hope in humanity, perhaps. I am encouraging you to be the type of courageous leader, the courageous coworker that doesn't subscribe to that belief, right? That hasn't given in to not believing that people are good. Thank you for sharing that, whoever shared that. And I'm glad that you just listened. And I hope that you did some way of getting rid of that negative energy after that conversation. Okay, so let's keep going so we don't run out of time. So that's words of affirmation. The second one, or second highest one here, if I can get my PowerPoint to move, is quality time. And about 30 to 35% of the people we work with will have this as one of their primary languages of appreciation. When we are going to use quality time to show gratitude or appreciation in the workplace, it's individual time. It's that really one-on-one time where we're fully present, because we can feel it when we are on the phone with someone and they're typing on their computer. We don't even need to hear them typing on the computer, but we can tell that they're distracted. That is not going to speak appreciation to that person. And it's personal attention. It's what makes that person feel like an important individual. So for those of you who are faculty, when you are interacting with your students, what makes your student feel like you really read what they contributed in the discussion? Or did you provide valuable, feedback? It could be tied with words of affirmation. But what are you doing to make it really feel like they're not just another coworker, another boss, another faculty member, another student, but that personal attention? I also want to say this, because what I hear from people in the workplace is, there are some people that are very task focused and they don't want to get personal, so to speak. Personal attention can come in the form of saying, how is your project going? It doesn't have to be, how was your weekend and what did you do with your family? It can be, what is your biggest success you've had in the last month in working with your team? It could be asking them what they're struggling with. So it could be work related. All right, moving
Jeanette-
on to the third language of appreciation.
Jeanette-
Yes.
Jeanette,
Yes.
we have a question from Carol. So Carol,
Yes.
you raised your hand. Go ahead and unmute, Carol. Carol Lacey or Carol, both the Carols? Carol
This
Lacey.
is Carol Lacey. I didn't raise my hand. I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, it's another Carol.
I don't have.
Okay, we're all good now.
All right. Well, Carol, if you throw it in the chat or raise your hand again, and we'll try to get your question answered. All right, acts of service. This percentage goes down a little bit, about 20 to 25% of people will have this as one of their higher languages of appreciation. Really important here, ask before you help someone. Otherwise, it feels like micromanagement. Otherwise, it feels like you're overstepping boundaries. You're being disrespectful. You're stepping on people's toes. So you always want to ask permission. Then the second thing is you follow up by doing it in the way that they would do it. Now, it's not to say don't take your own path, but an example is if somebody says, hey, can you, I'm really struggling with this spreadsheet. And you say, would you like me to look at it? And they say, sure. And you send it back to them and it's reformatted, right? It doesn't make sense. So there are going to be some liberties that you're going to take in a way to make sure that that act of service allows you to do the work, but we don't want to recreate anything because then it feels like somebody's telling us that we didn't know what we were doing. And that creates a repellent that's going to hurt your G factor. All right, then second to the last one, gifts. Only 6% of people in the workplace will have this as a primary language of appreciation. It is not in the form of money or bonuses. It really comes in the form of something small and knowing what they like. For some of you who were on here earlier, you might have heard me talking with another person, Jan Stanley. Jan and I worked together. I talked about being a student at St. Cloud Technical College. I also was a faculty member years later. And Jan and I worked together. And when my mom passed away, she went to a nursery with me and purchased a bush for me to plant at my home in memory of my mother, right? That was meaningful. That was very meaningful. Now, does it have to be a plant? No. It can be, you know what? You know that this person likes caribou, so you stop and you get them a caribou coffee. You don't get them a Starbucks coffee if they're a caribou drinker, and vice versa. And you certainly don't get them a coffee if they're a tea drinker. So the gifts really need to be important to the person that is receiving them. Right. And then the last one, physical touch, right? The hug that I talked about with Glennis. It's a very low percent of how we show appreciation in the workplace that really speaks volumes to people, but it does exist. Here's what we know in the workplace. It's spontaneous celebration. It's the high fives, it's the handshakes, it's the fist bumps, it's the pats on the back. And for some of you, it is appropriate in your culture to do the hug. Know what is appropriate in your culture, in your corporate culture, or your education culture, in your department culture, because it's not the same everywhere. It really varies from culture. We also want to keep in mind, even though the book talks about company culture, we're a diverse workplace. We are in diverse educational institutions and corporations and nonprofits. So we want to respect the boundaries of physical touch. I like to give this example. NFL football players, how do they do spontaneous celebration? Well, they slap each other on the backside. I am not advocating that you do that in the workplace, but it makes sense over there. It doesn't make sense for a lot of us. And thank you, Eileen. Yeah, it's just like barely, it's around 1%. So thank you for that. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example here of what I did recently to show gratitude to really let my gratitude G factor live and breathe. This was in December, and 2020 was a tough year, and people want to have more fun. The research is showing that companies are hiring people to do team building, whether it's a tasting or a bingo, but trying to create healthier workplaces. So I have a colleague who wrote this book called 50 Fun Things, and that is a journal with my business logo. I sent these to people. And when I sent them to people, you may think, well, Jeannette, of course you're working with your clients, right? These are not all to clients. Some of those in that particular stack were to people who just have been supportive to me throughout the year. And I didn't just put these 2 things in the envelope. I handmade a card and personalized it for each individual. I wrote a very personal message to each person that identified how they supported me or why I appreciate them. And that's the thing about appreciation. It has to be authentic. If it is not authentic, the meter goes up and people go, you know what? They just want something from me. So we want it to be authentic. So what I'm going to ask you to do right now with that pen and paper is identify at least one person that you work with who you can show some appreciation to, who you can use your gratitude G factor for. And then I want you to write down what you appreciate about them. What is it that you are going to tell them you are thankful for? So take a moment and write those notes before we go on to the next G factor. And as you're writing, a follow-up came into that conversation with that coworker. That maybe the coworker was just venting. And we're all going to vent sometimes. Hopefully your coworker doesn't feel like that all the time. And that gets into, for the person who was there to listen to their coworker, there's a G factor we called generosity, showing kindness and concern. And you probably were using your generosity G factor in that moment just to be there for that employee or that coworker and listen to them. So kudos to you for doing that. All right. Now I want you to reflect what's getting in the way of your gratitude G factor. What is preventing you from showing gratitude to the people that you work with, to the people that you lead? Is it that you use the excuse of you don't have the time, or you hold the belief that you shouldn't have to thank someone for doing what they were supposed to do? Is it that you're not sure how to do it? And if anybody wants to share theirs, I would love to see it in the chat. You can send it just to the panelists, so then Janice and I will see it and it's not public for everyone. Or you can send it to all panelists and attendees if you would like. But if anybody wants to share maybe what's getting in the way of their gratitude G factor, throw it in that chat. Okay, I see sounding insincere. Okay, yeah. And I think that being present helps us to be more sincere and being genuine, being really authentic with the gratitude. I see another one here. I feel like it's just so not done in my department that they would not be receptive. Okay, so it's a culture. And here's what I find with G factor. If you feel like it's a culture, what I want you to do is, and this is for Mary or anybody else who is feeling this, I want you to honor your G factor. Your responsibility is to honor your gravitational pull. And they may not be receptive, but if you can start small and make baby steps, because what I don't want you to do is allow people to rob you of your G factor. There's also a G factor called gather. And my guess is that if you were to go through the exercise in the book around gather G factor, you'd probably get some pretty clear indicators of who maybe you can be limiting your time around when possible. In the workplace, I know we can't always do that. Oh, pride that I messed up, right? Oh my goodness. I wish I could stay here all afternoon and talk about all the G factors with you, because that one that came in, pride that I messed up. There is also a G factor called grant, and it's about giving yourself and other people permission to make mistakes, right? And when we do that, we can let go of the pride and admit to the mistake. Um, and someone said, I guess I don't feel like I need it, so I don't think of it. So thank you for sharing that. That's a great point. Uh, Remember that out of any of the characteristics, the thing that's going to build trust and make people want to work with you or work for you is appreciation. And it doesn't have to be overbearing appreciation. It can just be thank you because. I recommend you be specific, or I appreciate your help because, or I appreciate your help with. Um, and I see one more here, and then I'm going to move on. Assuming they know I'm appreciative, saying thanks once, but not repeating it. Right. Yeah. We don't want to assume. I mean, you know, shouldn't be overkill either. But take those opportunities to recognize that. What works for me is when I actually put a plan together. I'm a very big picture person. So I like to say, one year, what I did is I said, once a week, I'm going to write a handwritten thank you and I'm going to mail it to someone. So I would just think that week about the people in my life and who was someone that I should be showing appreciation to. And it was for just many different things. So once I had a plan, I was more able to follow through with it. Okay, so let's go on to generate, inspire, and be infectious. This is one of my favorite G factors. And you will notice it says infectious, not infection. I always like to delineate between the two, because what we're talking about here is what are we doing to spread inspiration? This is what is going to help you with your G factor. This is going to increase your gravitational pull as well. So let me introduce you to Jess here. And Jess is an old coworker of mine, old meaning from years ago, from the early 2000s. I talked about being a student at the St. Cloud Technical College, now St. Cloud Community or Technical and Community College. But in 2002, I got a phone call and they were looking for faculty. So I became a faculty member there for 5.5 years, and I got one of the greatest honors is teach beside some of the people that I had learned from. Jess here was one of the faculty members in that program. I had not learned from her. She's younger than I am. But when I started there, I repelled her to be completely forthcoming. And Ashley, you know Jess because you were a student in the program. But I repelled her. Here's the reason I repelled her. I had some behaviors that reminded her of a previous coworker. And it was a situation with a previous coworker that really turned ugly. That coworker was no longer there, but nonetheless, some of my behaviors reminded her of this person. So Jess was very suspicious of me. But I stood back and I watched her. And she had incredible generate G factor. She had energy. A lot of the students loved her. And I can tell you this, if they had to sign up for an 8 a.m. class, guess whose class they wanted? They wanted Jess's 8 a.m. class because she was so good at promoting people's confidence. And at the same time, she would inspire them to do better. She wasn't just willing to accept what they brought to the table. She wanted them to grow. So as I watched her, I was like, oh my gosh, I want me some of that, because she has generate G factor. She inspires people. She is infectious. So I watched her and I learned from her. I'm happy to say, now we're talking almost 20 years later, she is one of my very dearest friends. And I did learn from her. And I believe that I was able to generate and inspire and be infectious as a faculty member too. So for those of you who are here, who are faculty members, my heart goes out to you. I know how hard you work. I still have friends that are college faculty. I have friends that are elementary school teachers, middle school teachers, high school teachers. So just thank you, a genuine thank you for what you're doing this year to figure it out, as well as for leaders. You're trying to figure it out. as well as individual contributors, you're trying to figure it out. So, stand in the progress that you're making. All right, so let's talk about some excuses that get in the way of our generate G factor. I hear people say there isn't anything special about me. Now, they're saying that about themselves. And this is what I'll tell you. To be completely forthcoming, in my almost 52 years on this planet, I have yet to meet someone that I go, yeah, you're pretty just uneventful. You're not very interesting. You're not fascinating. Because everybody is fascinating. Now, keep in mind, I'm the kid who talked to people everywhere, strangers in strange places, in public restrooms, in line at the grocery store. And I come back and I'm like, I just met the neatest person, the most fascinating person. So there is something special about you. And if you don't know what it is, it just means we have to do some work to help you discover it. I hear, I'm not good at it. Well, it's a skill. It's a skill. So how did Michael Jordan learn to become an amazing, one of the all-time best NBA players? Well, he continued to practice, even though he was cut from, I can't remember if it was his high school or his basketball team. Then I hear this, I'm just me. I'm just me. Well, just you're pretty fantastic. There is something about you that inspires. And this reminds me of a quote by Leo Buscaglia. I don't know if any of you know who he is. He passed away in the 90s, but he was the love doctor. He was a college professor. He was a speaker and author. And he had this quote, "You are uniquely something that will never happen again." You are uniquely something that will never happen again. So whoever just you happens to be, it's a pretty fantastic thing. Because it's that thing that you are that you can use to help your generate G factor. Okay, so here's some research behind the research. Bain & Company, huge consulting company, 2016, this is what they found. When you have one distinguishing strength, it doubles your chances of being inspiring. Only one distinguishing strength. You get to be doubly inspiring. So highly recommend that you figure out what that one distinguishing strength is if you don't know already. 2015, some research said that leaders, everything they do, and we all lead in some way, impacts our employees. So you may not be a manager, a director, a vice president where you're leading a team of people, but think about everything you do impacts the people that you work with. It impacts the people in your department, in your division, the person who, if you are working in the workplace, sits close to you at work. Now, this is interesting from Gallup, and Gallup is known for a lot of employee engagement research. They are known for strengths finders. So in 2012, they published this statistic that when we work with unpleasant people, so I want you to ponder if you are an unpleasant person to work with, because that is something that's getting in the way of your generate G factor. When we work with unpleasant people, it causes a lack of closeness on our teams in the workplace. And that means we have a 50% reduction in satisfaction. When we have dissatisfied employees, we have retention issues. When we have retention issues, it costs companies and organizations more money. So think about that. Those unpleasant people, those are the people that are repelling you. You don't want to be the person, I hope, that is repelling other people because you're unpleasant. This isn't to say that we don't all have bad days. We do. But research shows us people are less satisfied, 50% less satisfied when they have to work with unpleasant people, whether that's a leader, a coworker, faculty member, a student, individual contributor. So grab your pen and paper. Here's what I want you to do, because we are going to make sure we figure out what your distinguishing strength is. I want you to write your name down vertically. And if you have a short first name, go ahead and add your last name or your middle name to it, or do your first name twice, whatever you would like. And you are welcome to take out your mobile device if you want and look at a thesaurus if you need help, or you can throw it in the chat and I'll try to help you. I would like you to use each letter to come up with a word that describes you. So for example, here are mine. Jokester. I like to have a sense of humor. I'm easygoing. I'm abnormal. I'll explain more about that. I'm nervy. I am nimble. Thank goodness, because in 2020, we needed to be nimble. I'm excitable. I don't know if you can tell that, but I am. I'm tall. That goes back to number one, jokester, because I am not tall. I am a whole 5'1". I am talkative, as you have heard, and I am energetic. So come up with an adjective or a word that describes you. And if you have other words to describe you that don't match letters in your name, go ahead and write them off to the side. So I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes here to write those down, and let's see what you come up with. While you do that, I'm going to turn on a little music. I know that wasn't quite 2 minutes, but I'm looking at the time and we have 10 minutes left, and I want to make sure we get to these other pieces. So if you didn't get them all figured out, take the time after, because I'm going to give you some other questions to reflect on and write down. Think of these as superhero superpower questions. One is, what would you do first if the building was on fire? Would you make sure other people got out? Because that could be a clue to what your one distinguishing strength is. Would you yell fire? Would you call 911? What would you do first? Would you grab your things and leave everybody else behind? The next question. What animal best represents you and why? Kenny said he'd put out the fire. I like, you're a problem solver, right? Take action. You're a doer, Kenny. I like that. I'll share here. This is, and I shared this in the last G Factor webinar as well. This is the animal that best represents me, because you saw some of those words: quirky, abnormal, strange. Giraffes are a little quirky and abnormal. And this is the newest to my collection. I bought her, I don't think around Thanksgiving, because she was smiling at me at the store. So she needed to come home with me. Next question. Think of the person who respects you most at work or at school. And why do you think they respect you? Oh, Janice, a sloth right now. Maybe you need some water. So who respects you most and why? Can you identify why? If you cannot identify who it is, I want you to take some time to reflect later to figure out who it is. And if you cannot figure out why they respect you, I want you to ask them. If you think you know why they respect you, I want you to confirm it with them. So your answer to this question shouldn't end here. You should be having a conversation with that person after this, sometime in the near future, because the answers to all of these questions give us a clue to what your superpower is. They help us understand what your one distinguishing strength is, so that you know what about you can inspire and be infectious. Do you know what it is? Because if you don't, I want you to keep trying to figure it out. And if you do, I want to make sure that you're standing in the power of that, because that is going to help grow your Generate G Factor. So I'll share this with you. What you'll see at the top here, this is my personal mission and vision. And that is to learn, do, and experience things in my own unique, quirky way so that I can live a fun, exciting life. So how did I do that? Let's see. Is anybody else reporting blurry video of Jeannette? I don't know if somebody's got a blurry video. Oh yeah, you know what? I think it is a little blurry. See if I can get it to refocus. Move my head like this. Yeah, slight. Okay. Hopefully it'll refocus. Let me move my camera just a little bit. Sorry, I'm pausing here and it's taking time, but I apologize for I have no idea why. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop my video and then I'm going to restart it and see if that helps. All right. I think that cleared it up. Okay. I think it cleared it up. All right. As I was saying, so that's my vision and mission. And when I think about how do I inspire people, how do I use my Generate G Factor? Because I love giraffes. I collect giraffes. One of my most popular series I've done, I blog every week in my business, is about what we can learn from giraffes. And I did this in October of last year. And I took ridiculous pictures because you know what? It was fun. It was quirky. It's me. I embrace that. And that's how I inspire people in the work that I do. So, of course, the question then is, what is getting in your way of your own Generate G Factor? Can you identify it? All right, jot a note down on that. But what I want to do, because we're at the last 5 minutes, I said there's some good stuff here at the end. So we've only been able to talk about 2 G factors in some detail, and there are 6 others. You've heard me mention a couple others like grant. You heard me mention gather. You heard me mention generosity. I do have an assessment that you can take. If you want me to email you the link to the assessment, what I need you to do is just put your email in the chat. I know the screen says private chat, but if you send it to all panelists, or if it doesn't matter, you can send it to all panelists and attendees. If you send it there, what I will do within the next couple of days, for sure by Monday, I will send you an email with that link that will take you there, and it will take you through all 8 G factors, and it will give you a score and kind of explain what those scores mean. So that is just my gift to you, because my hope is that you will all continue to grow your G factor so that it helps you to have that positive reputation, to stand out so that you are sought out. The second thing here is I have, and I did this in the last webinar, 3 copies right here of my book. And I would love to gift them to 3 people here. And if you're like, oh, I already put my name in, go ahead and throw your name and your email in there a second time to see where it pops up. Because what I have here are numbers. And these numbers will coincide with the people in the chat. After here, I'll look through the chat. I will count to whatever these numbers are that I will pull. And I will reach out to you specifically. And I will ask for your mailing address, and I will mail you a signed copy of your book. So I'm going to pull 3 numbers out of here so you know what numbers they are, so you know I'm not making it up. One number is 23, number 23. I don't know who number 23 is. We will figure that out. Another number here that I'm going to grab is number 34. Number 34. And the final number, I'm trying to mix them up really good in here, right? The final number is number 10, number 10. So 10, 23, and 34, you will be the lucky people. I will look through the chat. I will figure out who you are, and I will send you an email and ask for your mailing address, and I'll get that mailed out for sure by Monday of next week. And if you do not end up to be a lucky winner and you're like, boy, I'd really like to learn more about this, you can get the book on Amazon. On Amazon, you just type in G Factor 8 Secrets. Make sure you do the 8 Secrets, not just G Factor. You might be concerned about what you see. So G Factor 8 Secrets. And this is how to get in touch with me if you'd like to get in touch with me. Thank you so much for spending this hour with me. I wish you great success with your G Factor. I wish you an absolutely fantastic 2021 and health and happiness to you all as you go forward and you continue to use your gratitude G Factor, show appreciation, and your generate G Factor. Keep inspiring people, folks. Thanks so much for being here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jeannette. Do we have any questions? We have a couple minutes. If anybody has a question they'd like to ask. Thank you so much. It's all inspiring. Every time I hear you, I get goosebumps. So I appreciate it. Let me see. Is anybody else? Anybody have a comment? All these great. I love the giraffe mugs.
I sent her a thank you. I love that giraffe. It has, you can't see it, but it has a giraffe in the bottom. I wish I had it. So every morning when I drink out of it, I get to save the giraffe from my coffee.
Lots of fantastic. Keep up the good work. Going forward with baby steps. Great, Ashley. I think that's wonderful. Lots of people thanking you for everything. So, and I am part of that too. So I just really want to say thank you again, Jeannette. It is always a pleasure, and we will look for other opportunities where we can share your strengths and share your superpower of getting this word out, because it is so much needed for the world we live in right now. So I appreciate your work. Yes, send emails in the chat and send anything you want, and we will connect with you. So this is being recorded. We will send out the presentation. We will send out the recording to everybody. Share with all of your friends, all your colleagues. And if there's anything that we can do from the Center of Excellence or from Jeannette's world, please let us know. We are here to help in any way we can. Thanks again, and have a wonderful week.
Thank you, Janice.
You bet.